Good morning. Potentially a heavy topic today, right? Why do we suffer? And when I say why, I think I'm going to go first, like there's some mechanics, right? There's a mechanical definition of suffering that comes from the teachings of Buddha. Um, why do we suffer? We suffer because of this mechanical truth, right? One way of looking at it. Why do we suffer in the teleological sense? Is there some purpose to our suffering? Is there, right? Is there something we can do with it even while we work to alleviate it? And I don't have, I'll say up front, I don't have good answers to this. I just think it's perhaps the question. Why meditate? Yesterday I asked why meditate, and I went through a bunch of stuff that in retrospect maybe wasn't very compelling. We meditate to alleviate suffering. What is suffering? Is it physical discomfort? Is it emotional distress? Is it anxiety about the future? Is it regret about the past? Is it all of those things? Is there a common thread to all of those? I mean, one common thread in Buddhism, but also in sort of classic Stoicism, so like Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, suffering is the additive, right? It is not the event; it is our opinion about the event, and that can be a tough nut to crack, right? Because if you've got a dagger in your knee hurts. But is that suffering? I remember I had some surgery on my chest, and it's quite painful in here. If you've ever had surgery here, or as I also do, I have tattoos on my ribs. It's just a big bundle of nerves there, and it was quite a large incision. And the primary concern after the surgery was pain management. So I woke up from the surgery and I felt pretty good. I had a self-administered morphine drip, and I also had, what is it called, an epidural? Something that they slam in the base of the spine. You literally don't feel anything. I felt great for a couple of days. Because this is something our modern medical system does well, is it can alleviate the symptoms of physical pain. But at a certain point, I had to go home, and they took that epidural out. I don't know what it is. If it's in my mind, it's like a nicotine patch that they slam on, but I think it's probably like a electric prong that they jab in. I don't know. But they took it off, and holy, and and I remember thinking at the time, this is like Buddhism 101. All I wanted was for that sensation to stop. I would have done anything to run away from it. Aversion from physical discomfort. Because it hurt. And I think that we don't have to start with that, right? We can sit and take a pose that is alert and maybe right on the edge of discomfort, because that edge of discomfort is alertness, not bordering into dynamic tension and difficulty, but something that lets you know that you're in a meditation pose. That's suffering in a dose that you can consume and work with. But why do we suffer? Well, the mechanics of why we suffer is because we're attached to things being other than they are. There's a whole bunch of literature on the translation of the word dukkha into suffering. Perhaps it's dissatisfaction. Suffering implies, when we say life is suffering, that doesn't sound great, right? Life is shit. But it isn't. Life is wonderful. And we embody, and we have a range of experiences that come from being human. I realize I've been cutting my head off. Dissatisfaction, which can be really existential, it can be profound. When you don't want your body to be hurting, and it is. You have the hurt, and then you have the suffering. When you wish you had a different job than the one that you do. This doesn't mean that we let things be. We don't rest in injustice. But we have to be very clear what's going on, what's really happening, and then what is the story. There's the sensation, and then there's the suffering, which is the story. And that comes about because we are either holding on to something that is no longer there, or we are pushing away something that is here. And so we suffer. We are dissatisfied, deeply dissatisfied. Dissatisfaction, like I can be dissatisfied because my coffee is too cold, but I can get over that, right? Dissatisfaction shouldn't be taken to mean easy or light. So the mechanics of suffering are associated with the additional story, the additional narrative that we apply to the phenomena. The phenomena arises. It's neutral until we apply feeling to it, and then we apply interpretation, and then we apply story. Again, if I'm sitting there and my knee hurts, it's probably not going to pop out. That's a story I'm telling myself. I'm probably going to be able to walk again, even though that may be the story that my mind is telling me, because my mind wants me to break concentration. But if I look down and I see that, in fact, there is a knife stuck in my knee, well, then I should do something about it, right? So we all suffer. Now, this is the second part is kind of where I wanted to get to. And we all have a thing. We all suffer. And it's not always apparent what that thing is, right? It could be health. It could be some kind of emotion that we carry with us. We all have a thing. I have a thing. You have a thing. That thing is our suffering. And yeah, maybe that suffering is caused because of the mechanics of suffering. But what do we do with that? What do we do with that understanding? And I would suggest that what we do with it is allow for that recognition of each other's thing, to cultivate compassion. In fact, not just to cultivate it, but out of necessity, compassion and kindness arise, because the tip of the iceberg that you are seeing of me is mirrored in the tip of the iceberg that I am seeing of you. We all have a thing. I know this sounds really, as I say it, deeply obvious, right? But live like that. That's the practice. And I think sometimes the language of the noble truth, suffering, and the realization of suffering, and the causal seeds of suffering can just be a bit off-putting. Because it's a translation, and it doesn't necessarily have a vibrancy to it. But I think we all have a thing. Use that as a mantra. We're all coming from that thing. And maybe our open heart and our authentic being and our clarity of vision that we've cultivated through meditation allows that thing to subside, or the suffering caused by that thing to subside. The thing is there. It's our thing. So we all have a thing. There's a corollary to this that I'll touch on now, but I think I'm going to talk more about tomorrow, which is that something will always happen next. And I think that gets into ideas of free will. It gets into ideas of right action. Something will always happen next that perhaps we can influence. But to what degree is my ability to influence shaped by my thing and where I am today? And that whatever decision I make to come next, something is going to come next. And maybe nothing other than what comes next could come next. This also, I think, gets into, or will get into, the idea of are we supposed to find a silver lining in our suffering? I tend to think not. What we can recognize, though, is that there's a procession of experience that appears to be this moment, but is just as validly the moment that passed and just as vibrantly the moment that is to come. And that next moment will come. And we can frame it with suffering, or we can frame it with compassion. But it will unfold perhaps in the only way that it can, given the structure of the universe as it has formulated over 15 billion years. So anyway, that's a different topic. But just remember, again, so much of this is blazingly obvious when I say it, right? I hear myself saying it, and I can see you thinking, yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, no kidding. We all have a thing, and we all tell ourselves stories about the thing, and we tend to interact with those stories. But what if we didn't? What if we recognized the stories as the suffering, and we interacted with the thing? So, I'm going to finish my coffee. I'm going to drop this off, and then I'm going to get to work. So, have a good day. It is Monday, so we have the week ahead of us. If you have any questions, comments, updates, let me know. And keep your wits about you.